Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to our course this week. I'm going to be teaching the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course over the next 5 days from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., helping students to be able to develop a really strong foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. We're going to be using this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as our foundational text. But we're going to start with meditation to help you guys get started with meditation. And then after the meditation, I'm going to introduce you to the course, helping you understand what it is you're going to be learning throughout the entire week. Then I'm going to share with you the life story of the Buddha, helping you to understand his entire life story. Then we're going to be moving into a talk on what is enlightenment. We're going to have a mid-morning break, but we're going to talk about what is enlightenment so you understand what this mental state is more thoroughly. We're going to take an hour and a half lunch break, and then when we come back, I'm going to teach you guys Buddhist chanting, so you'll learn about how to do the actual chanting. But you'll see everything that we're going to be learning throughout the entire course as after our meditation. So if you'd like to join for meditation, I start with the chanting to ease us into the meditation. You can get the chanting sheets over there on the cabinet if you'd like to have a chanting sheet. Most of you guys have all been here before, actually many times. I think, sir, have you been here before? In the white, have you been here before? Have you been here before? You have? Okay, so I don't need to tell you guys about the chants and the body positioning and all that other stuff that I normally tell everybody. So I don't need to explain all of that to you guys. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. You're going to actually learn these chants this afternoon. Then I'm going to come in with the guidance. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. And then I'll be coming out of the meditation with some more chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนะมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตตวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. If this meditation was a bit challenging for you, it's okay. You're going to have plenty of time to grow and learn and develop your meditation practice. But this is just the first one, just to kind of get started with the course and helping you guys to learn the teachings of the Buddha. We're going to be meditating each morning and each afternoon, helping you to get plenty of practice. And even at the end of this course, you're not going to be a master at meditation, right? It took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment, as you're going to hear here in a moment. So it's going to take you some time. So no need to put pressure on yourself to be perfect at any particular thing right away when you first start trying it. So I'm going to help you guys understand meditation and a whole lot of other things as we go forward in the course. So what I'm going to share with you guys is what this course is so that you'll understand what it is that I'm going to be sharing with you over the next 5 days. And then I'm going to teach you the life story of the Buddha before we take our mid-morning break. So this is the title of the course, and we're going to be meeting from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. I start class right at 9 a.m. And this is my contact information in case you guys need to contact me for any reason. If you're coming to class, great. I'll see you here. I'll teach you. If you're not coming to class, that's fine too. You do whatever you think is best in any given day. No need to call me or contact me and tell me that you're not coming to class. As you see, I don't take attendance or anything like that. This contact information is more so for after our class, after this program, because if you would like to reach out for any reason and get help, there's help for you beyond this course. So that's what this contact information is for. In terms of our kind of regular schedule and plan, the way that we're going to conduct the course is each day we're going to meet at 9 a.m. Doing chanting and meditation. So that's when I'm going to start, just right at the beginning at 9 a.m. I'll just start chanting and meditation. I'll welcome you, say hello, and then we're going to do meditation right away in the morning. Then around 9:30, we're going to start having a discussion on the teachings. Some people refer to this as a Dhamma talk. The word Dhamma means teachings. So this is a talk on the teachings. The way that I think about this is it's more of a discussion. It's more me sharing the teachings with you, helping you to learn them, you asking questions and getting help. This isn't a lecture or a sermon or a homily or anything like that. This is an opportunity for you to learn. So we're having a discussion to be able to help you understand what the teachings are. We're going to take a mid-morning break. Generally, that happens around 10:30, sometimes as late as 11, kind of happens somewhere around there, so that you guys can have a nice little break and spend time with each other, use the restroom, get a snack, stretch, whatever it is you'd like to do. Then we come back and we have another talk in the morning, and that takes us up to about 12 o'clock. And we generally take lunch, give or take, maybe we go a little bit earlier, maybe we go a little bit later, somewhere around 12 o'clock. And we usually get about an hour and a half lunch break. And then when we come back from lunch, we have another talk on the teachings, usually focused on meditation. And then I'm going to actually be doing meditation with you guys in the afternoon too. So you'll be doing meditation in the morning, in the afternoon, kind of building up your practice and getting a chance to really kind of propel you forward with this nice foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. And then we'll generally finish around 3 p.m. each afternoon. Again, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, just kind of see how the day goes and how it unfolds. So this is our kind of structure for the course each day. Our course is actually based on this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. If you don't have a version of this, you can get one for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, and we'll use that to purchase other books, or you can get it on Amazon. I'm going to be discussing chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 19 as part of this course. This is like the foundational aspect of the book and the foundational aspect of the teachings of the Buddha to really help you get moving forward with the teachings of the Buddha. The book is available in PDF, Kindle, and print versions. It's the first volume of a 13-volume book series. Students have shared with me that they've sometimes read this book 8, even 12 different times. I've had students tell me this, and they say that each time they read it, they're learning something new. So this isn't the kind of book that you're just kind of reading for completion and you just kind of plow through it in 2 weeks. Oftentimes people take 6 months to a year to just gradually walk their way through this book, because you need to not just read it, you need to independently verify what you're reading is true. So you might just decide to read 15 or 20 minutes a day and then put it down and independently verify that, kind of reflect on it. It's almost like taking a big bite of pizza would be really hard to chew, but if you just take a little small bite and you chew it and swallow it, you take another little bite, you chew it and swallow it, it's much easier to eat that way, right? So it's the same way with reading books, that if you just take a little bit, it's not a book that you would like to read for completion. The students who have plowed through it in 2 weeks, they usually don't do so well with building a foundation in their teaching. So it's usually best if you just kind of gradually walk your way through this book. In terms of what you're going to be learning in this program, we're going to start off this morning with talking about the life story of the Buddha, because if you're going to learn his teachings and get a foundation in this path to enlightenment, it's kind of nice to know a bit about this individual. So I'll share his life story with you guys. Then we're going to take our mid-morning break. Then I'm going to share with you guys what is enlightenment. Because if you're going to take this journey to a particular place, like if you were traveling and I said, hey, would you guys like to go to Chiang Rai? You'd be like, well, what is Chiang Rai? What is that? And I'd be like, oh, it's a city in the north. It's over the mountains. It's about 3 hours away. Here's kind of some of the things that are there. And you'd think about that. And then if you decided to go to that particular place, you'd be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you arrive, you would know that you're there, right? It's the same thing with enlightenment. If you didn't know what enlightenment was, how would you be able to navigate your way to it? And how would you know that you've actually gotten to enlightenment if you didn't know what it was? So here at the very beginning of your journey, I share with you what is enlightenment so that you'll understand what the goal, what the objective is, so that you can more easily navigate your way to it. And then once you get to enlightenment, you'll know that your mind is actually enlightened. When we come back from our break, I'm going to actually be teaching you about chanting. But Tomorrow, I'm going to start off with the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching of the Buddha. This is where you learn the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is like the trail marker. If you were going to go on a hike, there's usually typically a trail marker that kind of helps you to understand what it is that this hike is. The Four Noble Truths is that trail marker. It's helping you to really gain an understanding of what is the path to enlightenment in 4 simple statements that you can independently verify. That the Buddha is going to help you to have this little window into your mind to understand why you experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. So that's where people start. The Buddha would start all of his brand new students with right view, helping them to understand the Four Noble Truths. Then we're going to be continuing with that, helping you to understand the entire Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching you transforming the 3 poisons, craving, anger, and ignorance. This is where you're going to broaden your understanding of what's going on in the unenlightened mind and really deepen it. And we're going to talk about solutions here too. All of this is actually solutions. So the Buddha describes to you what the problems are, but he also gives you the solutions to that too. So you're going to be learning about that on Wednesday morning, because these are the 3 things at a high level that's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state and why you keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. Then I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. Looks like our projector kind of dropped down a little bit. I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. This is a householder's guide to daily practice. These are 5 impactful decisions that if you make them wisely, they're going to produce wholesome results for you. And if you make them unwisely, you'll experience unwholesome results. If you've ever learned that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, this isn't the 5 precepts. The Buddha didn't teach that way. That sounds like rules and commandments. It sounds like black and white. I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha to help you understand what he taught on this important topic, because he gives you much more illuminating language than just something really basic and rudimentary like that. So you'll be able to see what did he actually teach about these things. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to relate it to modern day so that you can see how to apply these 5 precepts in real life situations. So you'll be able to implement them in your day-to-day life. Then on Thursday morning, I'm going to teach you what is karma and how does it affect me. This is a natural law that you're awakening to of cause and effect, or action and result, helping you to be able to see this very clearly for yourself. I'm going to teach you the 4 types of karma, and I'm going to teach you how to extinguish your unwholesome karma, because you've produced unwholesome karma in the past, and now even getting on the path to enlightenment, you're going to need to experience that, but you would like to extinguish it. So I'm going to teach you how to extinguish your unwholesome karma. Then I'm going to teach you what is merit and how to get continued support on the path to enlightenment. Then I'm going to teach you how to do meditation. There's going to be this type of meditation, breathing mindfulness meditation, is what we're going to really focus on in this particular class, in this course, because this is the foundational meditation. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha used. You would need more than meditation to get to enlightenment, but you need meditation to get to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation, but you can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. You're going to need much more than just meditation. But in terms of meditation, this is the primary form. This is like the basis and the foundation of your meditation practice. So we're going to be spending our time developing that. And then I'm going to teach you about the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions, because these are the 4 body positions that you're going to need, because your body can't be in the same position permanently. You're going to need different positions at different times. And then we're going to learn Buddhist chanting as well. And then what you're not seeing down here at the bottom is that I'm also going to teach you how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. That spending time in a course like this, learning, it's great. We're going to spend 5 days together. You're going to learn a tremendous amount of things. But if you don't know how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life, okay, it was a good 5 days. See you later, right? You're not going to get the real benefit of coming to a course like this. So towards the end of the course, I'm going to teach you how to take what you've learned here over the entire course and integrate it into your day-to-day life. So that's where you'll actually see the real results. You're not going to get results by just going to a 5-day retreat or a 10-day retreat and then you don't do anything else after that. If you just go back to your normal life and just continue to do things the way you've always done things, you're not going to see the benefits and the results of the teachings of the Buddha. You need to actually integrate them into your day-to-day life, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. So do you guys have any questions on what we're going to be learning in the course? Anything you'd like to ask? I think you guys know that we have microphones here for you guys if you need to ask any questions. If you guys could get microphones when you talk, it's okay now. But there's people online that are tuning in, and if they won't be able to hear you. But you're going to see, I'm going to be able to gradually walk you through learning all these things. And you'll even be finished at 3 o'clock. You get to go enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, and you'll enjoy this too, but you'll get to enjoy the rest of your day, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. For those of you guys on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you guys have questions at any point, you can put that into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. So I'm going to share this first topic with you guys, which is the life story of the Buddha. In this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, this chapter is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death, because these were motivators that motivated the Buddha to actually go on this journey to enlightenment. As you guys are going to hear, something called the Four Observations. In the Buddha, at one point prior to being a Buddha, he looked at the human life as very difficult, and he was interested in helping people to escape that so it wouldn't be difficult, because by the time you get to enlightenment, there is no difficulty, there is no struggles. You've actually overcome all of that. Your life is really at ease. But in the unenlightened state, life can be a real struggle sometimes. So that's why this chapter is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. So this talk about the life story of the Buddha, I've organized it in this way. We're going to talk about his birth, his early life, his journey to enlightenment, and then his teaching and what he was doing during the time of his life where he was teaching. And then we're going to ultimately circle back and talk about sickness, aging, and death. Now, usually when I'm teaching, I kind of pause at different times and open up for questions. But with this particular topic, it's usually helpful if I just teach all the way through, explaining to you his whole life story, and then do questions at the end. So I'll teach you guys this entire life story of the Buddha based on the original source teachings, because that's where we have his life story, is in the original Pali Canon. That's the only documented evidence that we have of what he was doing during his life in these original source teachings. So the individual who we refer to as the Buddha, he was born into a royal family. His given name was Siddhartha Gotama. His dad was a king and his mom was a queen. And during this time frame, if you were a female and you were pregnant and you were going to deliver your baby, they would take you back to your homeland, wherever it was that you grew up, in order to deliver your baby. So the king organized a caravan for the queen to go back to her homeland to be able to give birth, because then she's around her parents, her siblings, and people that are there to help her. So that's usually the way they did things as part of their culture back then. So this caravan is taking the queen back to her homeland, and she goes into labor pains during the journey. So they stop the caravan, and she gets out of the caravan, and she goes over to this tree, and she's holding on to this branch of a tree, trying to deliver the baby out of the birthing canal. And it was having a lot of trouble. So she was standing up trying to deliver the baby, and it wouldn't come out of the birthing canal. So the baby ends up breaking through the side of her stomach, and 7 days later, because of this, she ends up dying, right? Nowadays, we would have just done a C-section. No big deal. She would have been just fine, right? But the baby couldn't come out, so it ends up breaking through the side of her stomach, and she died 7 days later. And because death of the woman, and sometimes even the child during childbirth, was not uncommon during that period of time, they actually had protocols in place that if you died as a woman during your childbirth or at any point thereafter, that if you had brothers and sisters, they would adopt your children as their own. So Siddhartha Gautama's mother, the queen, had an older sister who ended up adopting Siddhartha Gautama as her own child. So essentially his aunt became his stepmother. And this is the woman who actually raised him throughout his life, right? And now Siddhartha Gautama, it's said at the time of his birth, that there was a miracle that occurred. And I don't know that this is true, and I don't know that it's false. I don't think it's actually true, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. What people say, and what it's documented in the original text that happened at his birth, is it says that when he came out of the womb, that he walked 7 steps immediately, and 7 lotus flowers were blossoming under his feet, and he spoke, and he said, "This will be my last birth." Okay, I don't think this is actually true, because oftentimes when somebody's done something really wonderful, like a Buddha, people embellish the story along the way. We've had 2,500 years of history and impermanence where people could have been embellishing the story. They try to make someone who already did something very wonderful and very amazing to make them look even more amazing. Because if this part of the story was true, the next part of the story wouldn't actually be needed, right? So the next part of the story is that Siddhartha Gautama's father, being the king, was interested to know what his son was going to become, because was a common practice during this lifetime. They would summon fortune tellers, advisors, to come and advise you what your child was going to become. Well, if your child is walking and talking and lotus flowers are blossoming under their feet, you know what this child is, right? You don't need to have anybody come advise you of what this child's going to become, right? So I think that was an embellishment of the story, but nonetheless, it doesn't really matter because we have his teachings and we know how to get to enlightenment. But at the time of Siddhartha Gautama's birth, shortly thereafter, his father brought these advisors to come advise him of what his son was going to become. And 108 of them actually came to advise the king. 107 of them told the king that your son was going to be a great monarch, a great leader. He's going to rule over your territory and he's going to spread your kingdom far and wide. And then the king's like, yeah, that's my boy. All right, right? He's like really happy about that. Well, there was one advisor who came in and said, excuse me, sir, I'm so sorry. I need to apologize to you because your son is going to be a great leader. I heard those other advisors and they're 100% true. Your son's going to be a great leader, but not the way you think. He's going to be a spiritual leader. Right? And the king didn't like this. And he decides to sequester his son into the palace, trying to woo him into the ways of becoming a monarch. He never lets him go outside the palace his entire life. He gives him wonderful fabrics, entertainment, amazing food, jewels and riches, beautiful women bathing him and taking care of him. Everything you can imagine that a rich king father would do for their son. He did these things for his son. He really gave him this life of luxury because his thought was that if I can get my son attached to this lifestyle and really indulging in this lifestyle, he'll never want to go be a spiritual leader because he's not going to give that stuff up, because as a spiritual leader, he's not going to have this life of luxury that he could have as a king. So for 29 years, he basically rolls out the red carpet for his son, gives him everything and anything you can imagine. At the age of 29, Siddhartha Gautama was about to become the king, because during this time frame, you would become the king at the age of 30. Your father would retire and be right alongside of you to be able to help you become a king. So at the age of 29, he knew he was about to become the king very soon. And he thought, how can I rule over this kingdom if I've never even been outside the palace to see what this kingdom is about and see what these people are about? So he decides, against his father's wishes and without his father even knowing, to go outside the palace. And he goes outside the palace with his royal attendant, kind of like his chief of staff. And when he gets outside the palace, he has what's called the 4 observations. He sees a sickly person, an aging person, a dead corpse, and he sees a roaming ascetic, someone who's kind of given up worldly life in order to be able to understand the world and seek enlightenment. And when he goes outside of the royal palace and he starts having these observations, he's really confused about what he's seeing. He sees this sickly person. He sees like all this disgruntledness, all this agitation, all this frustration around this person who's sick. And he needs to turn to his royal attendant. He's like, what's wrong over there? Like, why are those people so disgruntled? And like, oh, that person's sick and, they're not going to be able to obtain the food and clothing and the things that they need in order to sustain their life. So they're very agitated and very frustrated. And this was mind-boggling to Siddhartha Gautama because he grew up in this life of luxury. He didn't understand that there were people in the world that were struggling, right? Because he didn't see any of that. He saw what he saw in the royal palace. And if you grew up that way, you'd probably think that everybody was experiencing that same thing, right? So for 29 years, that's what he experienced. And now when he saw this sickly person and that they were having trouble and difficulties to be able to survive and live life, he was really impacted by that. Then he saw an aging person, someone who was older and decrepit. They were having difficulties walking and their bones were protruding. And he again had to turn to his royal attendant and like, what's going on over there? And he's like, oh, this is what happens when we get older, and this person is going to struggle now. They're not going to be able to get food and water and the things that they need to survive. And once again, this has a real impact on Siddhartha Gotama because he had never seen that before. He was living this life of luxury. Then he sees a dead corpse. And this, of course, had people around that was crying and sorrowful and grieving. And once again, he turns to his royal attendant. And he's like, what's going on over there? And his royal attendant explained to him, like, this is what's happening at the end of this life, is that we're going to die. And now this person has died and their family members aren't going to be able to survive as easily because they're going to have difficulties getting food and clothing and shelter and medical care and these kinds of things. And once again, this had a huge impact on Siddhartha Gotama. He was starting to look at the world as being very miserable because he lived this life of luxury, but when he went outside the palace, he saw something very different than what he was used to. And then he sees the fourth observation. He sees this person who's kind of sitting off and meditating, and he needs to ask his royal attendant, like, what's going on over there? And he's like, that person over there, they're trying to figure out all of this stuff. They're trying to figure out why we keep experiencing sickness, aging, and death over and over and over again, and why we keep experiencing anger and frustration and all these things over and over and over again. And Siddhartha Gautama decides that's what he would like to do. He figured that if he became the king, he would be ruling over misery and despair. And he wasn't interested in ruling over misery and despair. He was interested in helping these people to escape out of that. So he decides he's going to leave the royal palace and go on this journey to be able to discover, why do we experience sickness, aging, and death? Why do we experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other things? So that he could help people to escape out of that. So he goes back to the palace, and at this point it's nighttime, and he had a wife and a young son at the time, an infant son, and they were sleeping. And rather than wake them up, he decides to just kind of leave in the middle of the night, because he didn't understand his mind as well as he did by the time he got to enlightenment, but he understood it well enough that he felt like if he woke them up and said goodbye, that he might not be strong enough to leave. So he just kind of looks in on them and then just kind of heads out. And he takes with him his favorite horse, and he takes his royal attendant with him. And now when he leaves out of the palace, he gets to a point where he ultimately decides to start shedding some of these things. He lets his horse go, he lets his royal attendant go, and he cuts off his hair. At this time, if you were a member of the royal family, you would grow this really long, beautiful, flowing hair. Even the males, they knew through your hair, if you went out into the kingdom, that you were a member of the royal family. Because if you had this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they knew that this was royalty. Because those of us that were out in the fields doing labor jobs and, doing things like that, we wouldn't be able to have long, beautiful, flowing hair because it'd get all tangled up and knotted. And we wouldn't have the time to sit there and comb it and brush it and shampoo it and detangle it. So people, the average person, would just have regular kind of shorter hair, where the royal family had servants and they had the time to sit there and have those people shampooing their hair, detangling it, and taking care of it. So they would have this long, beautiful, flowing hair. Where nowadays, the royal family, we just take their picture and we put it all over the kingdom, right? Or we put it on the money, and that's how people know who the royal family is, where that technology didn't exist 2,500 years ago. So during that time frame, they would grow this really long, beautiful, flowing hair. So cutting off his hair was like, I'm never going back, because nobody would ever think that he was actually the king if he tried to assume the throne, because he'd been growing that hair for 29 years. If he tried to assume this throne, people would know, like, how is this person the king? They don't even have long, beautiful, flowing hair. So cutting off his hair was like, I'm never going back. And there's other reasons and other things that occur by cutting off your hair. You don't need to cut off your hair in order to get to enlightenment, but it is one aspect of training the mind that can help you, that you'll learn as we go forward in this course. But nonetheless, he cuts off his hair. Then he takes up training with 2 different teachers because he was interested in getting to enlightenment. And he takes up training with this one teacher who was claiming that they knew how to get to enlightenment. And this individual teaches him to hang himself upside down from trees, to lay on beds of nails, to pierce his body with metal implements, and all these other things. And don't worry, we're not going to be doing any of those things in this course because what the Buddha discovered is that those things don't lead to enlightenment. So he studies for a year with this person. And this person ultimately comes to him and says, "You are a master of my teachings. You can start sharing my teachings. You've learned everything I have to teach you in just 1 year." And Siddhartha Gotama commented about how his mind wasn't any more peaceful or joyful at the end of that 1 year than it was when he was back in the palace. So he knew that he hadn't gotten to enlightenment. So he decides to leave from that teacher. Then he goes to this second teacher who was also claiming that they knew how to get to enlightenment. And essentially he was learning the same things, hanging himself upside down from trees, laying on beds of nails, piercing his body with metal implements. They were starving themselves, eating very little food. And again, at the end of 1 year, this teacher declared him a master as well. And he discovered that his mind wasn't any more peaceful than it was when he was in the palace. So he was frustrated with the whole thing. He thought he had wasted 2 years of his time. And he goes off into the forest by himself to try to train his mind. But the only thing he knows how to do when he's in the forest is the same things that he was doing with those other 2 teachers. So he continues to do these kinds of things. He takes it all the way to the extreme where he's only eating 1 grain of rice per day. That's how he was sustaining himself. 1 grain of rice per day, right? So as he was doing this for such an extended period of time, he was essentially on death's doorstep. He was sitting on the edge of the forest. He was meditating. His ribs were protruding. His facial bones were protruding. He was essentially skin and bones, and he was on death's doorstep. And there was this mother and a young daughter who come by, and they see him sitting there, and they know that this person is about to die just from his physical appearance. And they offer him some rice, and they beg and plead with him to actually eat this rice. And he reluctantly accepts this rice, and he starts to eat the rice. And he has a realization at this moment. He realizes that he was in the palace living all these life of luxury with sensual pleasures and everything you can imagine that a royal family would be able to provide their child. But then when he left the palace, he swung all the way to the other side, where now he was eating 1 grain of rice per day. And what he realizes in this moment is that there's a middle way, that he needed to practice this middle way where he wasn't living in these 2 extremes. And this is where his practice starts to really accelerate, where he starts to develop the Eightfold Path and all these other teachings that ultimately lead to his enlightenment. So in that last 4 years, he actually figures out how to get to enlightenment, a total of 6 years. But it was that last 4 years that he was really training his mind and figured it out. He was making, monumental progress in that short period of time. So he ultimately gets to enlightenment, and he knows that he's gotten to enlightenment because his mind's peaceful. It's calm, it's serene, it's content with joy. He's not experiencing any anger or sadness or frustration or anything else. But he realizes that the teachings that he learned and what he discovered on his own in order to be able to get to this enlightened mental state is vastly different than what everybody else was teaching. Because at the time, people were teaching you to hang yourself upside down from trees and things like this. And he was curious of whether or not he should actually share these teachings with other people. He was contemplating this. So he goes to this tree, which today is in Northeast India, and he hangs out at this tree for 7 weeks, contemplating whether or not he should share his teachings with others, because he knew his teachings were so different. But ultimately, he did decide that he was going to share his teachings with others. So he went back to the area where he was studying with those first 2 teachers, and he encounters 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers. And when he comes in contact with these individuals, they start laughing at him. They start joking him. They start mocking him. Because to them, in order to get to enlightenment, you needed to be starving yourself. You needed to be disparaging the physical body. The thought was if you could cause pain to the physical body and your mind would overcome that, you would get to enlightenment. That's what their thought was. So when they saw this bright, vibrant, radiant individual who had meat on his bones and he looked so healthy and cheerful, they thought he had given up on enlightenment, and they were laughing at him and joking him and mocking him. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that doesn't bother you. that doesn't affect your mind whatsoever when people are doing those things. So he just comes over to where they're at, these 5 people, and he sits down on the ground and he takes his hand and he touches the earth. And he performs the one and only miracle that he ever performed. When he touches the earth, the animals come to where he's at. So there's like squirrels and rabbits and birds and lizards and snakes and deer and all these animals just coming to where he was at. And these 5 people saw what he did and they were like, okay, you've got my attention. What do you have to say? And they sat down and the Buddha delivered the 4 Noble Truths, helping them to understand the problem in their mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And the way that the teachings of a Buddha work is they're independently verifiable. So when he explained what those 4 Noble Truths were, they could independently verify in that talk that he had indeed discovered the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. And you guys will be able to do that tomorrow. If you haven't learned that with me already, I'll be teaching it tomorrow morning, where you can see in a way that you can independently verify that yes, these are the truth, that this is the problem, this is the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. So those 5 individuals knew that he had discovered how to get to enlightenment, and they become his first 5 students, his 4 previous classmates and one of his previous teachers. And from that point forward, more and more and more people started learning and growing and developing with him. That there would be times where individuals who were teachers, who thought that they knew how to get to enlightenment, they would sometimes come and talk with the Buddha, and they would bring their students with them, and they would have conversations, and they would talk to the Buddha, and the Buddha would help them to understand what it takes to get to enlightenment. And sometimes that teacher would get so angry and frustrated that they would get up and storm out of the meeting. And in that situation, that person's students would know, oh my goodness, my teacher is not enlightened, right? And then those students would actually become students of the Buddha. And sometimes that teacher and the Buddha would be talking, and that teacher could see just through the conversation with the Buddha that he had gotten to enlightenment, and he or she would become a student of the Buddha and bring with them the students that they had, right? So the community of the Buddha just kept growing and growing and growing. If you can imagine the hundreds and thousands of people that would have been studying with him. So his teaching career goes from the age of 35 all the way up to 80. He taught that entire time frame, and countless people got to enlightenment during that time frame. And then afterwards, they preserved the teachings so that countless more people could get to enlightenment after his death. So the 3 criteria, the primary criteria of what makes a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people. And then countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. And that's what makes a Buddha, among other things. So at the age of 80, he ends up dying. He ends up dying from old age. There's a lot of rumors out there. People say he died from a poisonous sandwich, which isn't actually true. This myth that people say is they say the Buddha was at this event and he knew that there was a poisonous sandwich on the buffet, and there was someone else that was getting ready to eat that sandwich, and he took the sandwich and ate it himself first. Is that a wise thing to do? If you knew there was a poisonous sandwich on a buffet, would you eat it? No, you'd throw it away, right? This isn't actually true. This isn't what happened. But you'll hear this from time to time. So if you read this book series, you'll see exactly how the Buddha died. It explains it very clearly. But nonetheless, he dies at the age of 80. And during his time frame of teaching, he ultimately understands and explains the sickness, aging, and death, and why we experience so much frustration and agitation and annoyance and grief and sorrow during these time frames. What's happening is that when someone's sick, if they're agitated and frustrated, that's because they're craving permanent health. When in reality, this body can't be permanently healthy. It's not possible. This body is impermanent. You will experience sickness. Even when you're enlightened, you will still experience sickness. It's not possible for this body to be permanently healthy. But if you crave permanent health, now when the body is sick, your mind will be discontent. Or if you crave permanent youthfulness, as this body ages and you get wrinkles and gray hair and you get a little bit of fat and all these other things, you'll be frustrated and agitated and annoyed. Maybe you can't move as easily. You can't get down on the ground as easily. You'll be frustrated and agitated and annoyed. Or if you crave permanent life, when you're getting close to death and you're experiencing this impermanence, your mind will be frustrated. You'll have a lot of pain. And the people around you too. If they're craving for you to be in this world permanently, when you die, they will be frustrated and agitated and annoyed. They'll be grieving and sorrowful, right? So he discovers that what's causing all of the disgruntledness around sickness, aging, and death is craving for permanence, wanting things to be permanent. And then ultimately, he talks about birth. As long as there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. So if you're interested in eliminating all of that, you need to eliminate birth. So the same thing that is leading to discontentedness, which is craving, desire, attachment, is the same thing that leads to birth. So by eliminating the causes and conditions that are producing discontentedness, you will also eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing birth. Because as long as there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. So he talks about the cycle of rebirth as how to end that and how to escape out of that so you don't have to keep experiencing this over and over and over and over again. So this is a bit about his life story. I'm going to see if you guys have any questions. Is there anything you would like to ask me about his life story? No questions here. Let me see if we have anything online. For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I'll be able to help you. Okay, I don't see any questions. All right, so what I'm going to do is share with you guys this last little quote before we take our mid-morning break, is that no one ever said life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough. Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings is not easy, but learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough. Right? Because this difficult human existence, it's difficult in the unenlightened state, going around with anger and sadness and resentment and jealousy and shame and guilt and fear and all these other feelings. That's really difficult life, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? No one ever said life was going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be tough. You can learn and practice, and you can train your mind, and you can get to the same mental state that the Buddha got to. This mental state of enlightenment isn't reserved just for the Buddha, and it's not reserved just for ordained practitioners. Everybody and anybody is able to make their way to enlightenment. You just need to have the wisdom of how to do that. If you don't have the wisdom of how to get to enlightenment, it can seem like a monumental task, right? If you're at the bottom of the mountain and you're looking up at the top of the mountain, it's like, oh my goodness, I'll never get to the top of that mountain. Well, if you tell yourself that while you're standing at the bottom of the mountain, you'll never get to the top of the mountain because you're not even going to try. But if you're just like, wow, that's a tall mountain, let's see what I can do. And now you just start focusing on one step at a time. And next thing you know, you're putting one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. You're halfway up the mountain. And if at any point you ever get tired, you just kind of sit down and you rest your legs, you rest your feet, right? And then when you rest, you get back up and you continue to walk up the mountain. The next thing you know, you're at the top of the mountain. And the beauty about this type of mountain that you're climbing is that a regular mountain, when you get to the top of it, it's a beautiful view. It's fresh air. It's wonderful being up there. But you've got to come back down, right? You got to go back to your life. Well, this mountain of enlightenment, climbing this, once you get to it, once you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. You can enjoy the view, you can enjoy the fresh air because your mind's never again going to experience any discontent feelings. So as you're making your way up, it's challenging. You're going to meet with challenges along the way, but you can overcome those challenges. The only reason why you have any difficulties or struggles in your day-to-day life is because you lack wisdom. There's just certain wisdom about these natural laws that you don't have, and because your mind doesn't have that wisdom, there's difficulties and struggles that the mind experiences. That's the indication to you that you haven't learned everything you need to learn about this world yet. And the Buddha actually has a teaching on this. He talks about the struggle to get to enlightenment, right? He says, don't shrink back from the struggle, right? Don't shrink back from the struggle, because that's typically what the unenlightened mind does. When you're walking towards something, if there's a struggle, you'll kind of run away from it, right? And if you do that, you're just ensuring that that struggle is going to continue. Because the only reason why you're struggling is because there's a lack of wisdom. And if you run away from that struggle, you'll never cultivate the wisdom that you need in order to overcome it. So the very next time you meet with that same struggle, you will be struggling because you don't have the wisdom of how to overcome it. So if you keep shrinking back from the struggle, if you keep running away from it, then you'll never cultivate the needed wisdom to overcome it. But instead, if you turn around and you walk towards the struggle, now you can cultivate wisdom. And then the very next time you're faced with that challenge, you've got the wisdom to overcome it. No big deal. So easy, right? So instead of shrinking back from any kind of struggle that you're experiencing in life, walk towards it. Walking towards it is to cultivate wisdom, to understand how to make wise decisions to overcome this particular challenge. And that's what's going to see you through. So learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha, it's not easy, right? But it's also not tough. You just need to gradually do it little by little by little by little. Keep in mind, the Buddha took 6 years to get to enlightenment. So you're going to take some time. This isn't a 1 week journey, a 1 month journey, or even a 1 year journey. It's going to take you multiple years to get to enlightenment, but it's a permanent mental state. And you're going to see gradual improvement all the way through. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Sometimes people think that the Buddha sat under that tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. But that's not true. You heard his life story. It took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. So at the end of this 5-day course, is anybody going to be enlightened? No, you're not going to be enlightened at the end of this course, right? But you will have what you need to start making your way towards enlightenment. You're going to need other teachings as well, but at least you'll have the foundations that you need, right? So there's going to be challenges along the way. There's going to be struggles, right? Because we're going to be teaching you all kinds of things about the path to enlightenment. But then when you go out there into the world and you start practicing these teachings, that's where the rubber hits the road. You know, when your mom's yelling at you, or your dad's frustrated at you, or your brothers and sisters, or your life partner, or your children, you're having these certain challenges, that's where the rubber really meets the road. And you're going to need to work through those struggles. But if you run away from them, you'll never cultivate the needed wisdom. So what I encourage you to do, and what the Buddha encourages you to do, is walk towards the struggle. And that's what's going to ensure that it doesn't occur any longer. So no one ever said life would be easy, but it's not supposed to be tough. Learning and practicing Gotama Buddha's teachings is not easy, but learning and practicing Gotama Buddha's teachings will ensure that life isn't tough, because life just gets better and better and better as you're learning and practicing the teachings. Gradually, slowly, but surely, you'll see the condition of your mind in your life improving. Okay? So when we come back from our break, I'm going to teach you guys this next topic of what is enlightenment. This is going to help you to understand what enlightenment is and how to know that you've actually attained enlightenment once you get there. So it's basically about 10:15. Why don't we take a nice 20-minute break up to 10, what would that be, 10:35? Let's just call it 10:40, right? Just make it even. We'll come back at 10:40, and then that way I will be able to start sharing this topic with you. So if you'd like to take a break, use the restroom, get some snacks, spend time with each other, I'll see you guys in about 20-25 minutes, okay? So thank you guys for your interest to learn, and we'll have a really great time this week, and I'll share with you the next topic after break, okay?